Welcome to another deep dive. This time we're cracking open a book that's all about, well, what it means to be a man today. Especially with all the stuff flying around about red pill and those hidden covert contracts and relationships and all that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a minefield out there, isn't it?
It really is. And this book seems to get right into the heart of it. They've got these excerpts focused on, like, self-improvement, masculinity, all that good stuff.
Right, and what's interesting is they don't just rehash those old stereotypes. They actually start by challenging them,
Oh, how so?
Well, they say true masculinity isn't just about, being the tough guy or the breadwinner. It's more about resilience, emotional intelligence, self-reliance, those kinds of qualities.
Huh, that's interesting. So it's more about inner strength than just the outward appearance of it.
Exactly. And that's something that can be really empowering, especially for guys who feel like those traditional roles are being questioned or redefined.
Right. It's like finding your own definition of what it means to be a man rather than just accepting what society throws at you.
Exactly. And that leads to a pretty surprising concept they emphasize: meditation.
Meditation. That's not usually the first thing you think of when it comes to masculinity, is it?
Not really, right. But they tie it back to that self-reliance you're talking about. Think about those pioneers, forging their own path, relying on their inner strength.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's like building that inner fortress, that mental clarity to
Right.
deal with whatever the world throws at you.
Exactly. And they actually compare meditation to that rugged individualism. It's something you can do anywhere, anytime. You don't need any fancy equipment or a guru.
I like that. It's like taking that pioneer spirit and applying it to your inner world.
Right. And the science backs it up too. Meditation actually changes the brain. It helps you focus, manage your emotions, all that good stuff.
Okay, so it's not just about feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
There are actual tangible benefits to it.
Right. And speaking of challenges, the book doesn't shy away from this idea of a war on masculinity.
Yeah, that's something you hear a lot about these days. What's their take on it?
Well, they argue that there's a deliberate effort to undermine traditional masculine roles and values. They point to how men are often portrayed in the media, for example.
Oh, right, like those stereotypical bumbling dads you see in sitcoms.
Yeah, exactly. Or take Iron Man, for instance.
Yeah.
He started as this archetype of strength and confidence, right? But over time, he's become more sensitive, more emotionally vulnerable.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that. So they're questioning whether this is a positive evolution or a deliberate attempt to, like, weaken the character.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, isn't it? And they're not saying that men shouldn't be emotionally healthy, but they're asking, where's the line? Does embracing emotions somehow weaken that core strength?
Right. It makes you think. And this ties into that whole covert contract idea too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Are men being asked to give up their core selves in relationships?
That's a key question. They're saying, look, are you compromising your own values to meet expectations that might not even be explicitly stated?
Wow. So it's about becoming aware of those subtle pressures and then deciding for yourself what you believe masculinity means, not just blindly following the script.
Exactly. And that leads into the whole idea of emotional resilience, which is something they really delve into.
Okay, so it's not just about being tough and stoic all the time.
Yeah.
What's their approach?
Well, they argue that true emotional resilience isn't about suppressing your emotions, but about managing them effectively.
So it's like acknowledging them, understanding them, and then using them in a productive way.
Exactly. Bottling things up can lead to all sorts of problems, anger, anxiety, even health issues.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like that pressure cooker analogy, right? If you keep it all bottled up, eventually it's going to explode.
And they have this really powerful story in the book about a guy who overcame addiction through emotional resilience. He learned to identify his triggers, manage his cravings, and build a support system.
Wow, that's inspiring. It's like
Yeah.
proof that this stuff actually works. It's not just theoretical.
Right. It's about real people facing real challenges and finding that strength within themselves.
And that connects to another theme I noticed: self-reliance.
Oh, absolutely. They're concerned that modern society, with all its conveniences, is actually making us more dependent.
Yeah, I can see that. Especially with technology, right? Like, we're so reliant on our phones and the internet for everything.
Exactly. And they argue that this over-reliance on technology, government, even those quick fixes, it can undermine our ability to be truly self-sufficient.
So it's like we're trading short-term comfort for long-term strength.
That's a good way to put it. And in today's digital age, that self-reliance needs to extend to the online world too.
Okay, so what kind of advice do they give for that? Like how to be more self-reliant online?
They get pretty specific, actually. They talk about protecting your digital footprint, being wary of scams, understanding the dangers of public Wi-Fi, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's all important stuff. It's easy to get complacent, you know?
Right. And they even delve into the dark web, highlighting how personal information is sold there. It's a bit unsettling, but it reinforces the importance of taking control of your online presence.
Wow, it's like the Wild West out there, digitally speaking.
It really is. You got to be your own sheriff, protecting your data and your privacy.
That's a great analogy. So it's not just about practical skills, right? They're also talking about this self-knowledge, that introspection we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. They dedicate a whole section to it, encouraging you to really examine your own thoughts, motivations, those covert contracts you've entered into, all that.
Okay, so it's about understanding yourself first before you can effectively navigate the world around you.
Precisely. And they actually give you exercises to do this, to really delve into those inner depths. It's not just about reading and agreeing, it's about putting these concepts into practice.
I like that. It's like actionable steps, not just vague advice.
Exactly. And they even connect introspection to tangible benefits like improved job satisfaction. They cite a study showing that people who regularly engage in introspection tend to be more fulfilled in their work.
Really? So it's not just some airy-fairy self-help concept. It can actually make you better at your job.
That's what they're saying. And it makes sense, right? The more you understand yourself, the better equipped you are to make decisions that align with your values and goals.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Self-reliance, emotional resilience, digital security, introspection. It's like a whole toolkit for navigating the modern world as a man.
It really is. And it's all about empowering yourself, taking control of your own narrative, and defining what it means to be a man on your own terms.
I love that. It's a powerful message, and one that I think a lot of guys out there need to hear.
Absolutely. And speaking of powerful messages, let's dive into another fascinating topic the book tackles, the media. They have some pretty strong opinions about how media shapes our perceptions, especially when it comes to masculine. So yeah, where were we? Oh, right, the media.
Yeah.
The book really digs into this idea that the media, well, it can be pretty manipulative, especially when it comes to how they portray men.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, everyone knows the news can be biased, but they're saying it's even deeper than that.
Right. They break it down into a few key tactics. First, they talk about how language is used to frame issues.
Like setting the stage without you even realizing it.
Exactly. It's subtle, but it can really influence how you perceive things.
Okay, so how does this relate to men specific?
Well, they give some examples. Like they point out how certain words are always used to describe men in a negative light, while similar actions by women are described, differently.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like creating this implicit bias, even if it's not intentional.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual words, it's about the overall narrative, the way stories are framed.
Right, so it's about recognizing those subtle cues, those loaded words, and questioning the intent behind them.
Exactly. And that leads to the second tactic they talk about, selective presentation of information.
Oh, right, like cherry picking the facts to fit a certain agenda.
Exactly. And they use the example of crime statistics. They say that the media often focuses on male perpetrators of violence, even though studies show that women commit a significant portion of domestic violence.
Wow, that's interesting. So they're saying that the media creates this perception that men are inherently more dangerous, even if the data doesn't fully support that.
Right, and it plays on our fears, our anxieties. It creates this bogeyman, and guess who it is?
It's like they're reinforcing those negative stereotypes without even acknowledging the full picture.
Exactly. And then the third tactic they talk about is emotional appeals.
Oh, right, like those commercials that try to make you feel inadequate unless you buy their product.
Exactly. They're playing on your emotions, bypassing your rational thinking.
It's everywhere, isn't it? Like fear-mongering in the news, or those heart-wrenching ads for charities.
Right. And the book argues that these emotional appeals are often used to push specific agendas, whether it's political, social, or commercial.
So it's not just about selling products. It's about shaping our worldview, our values, even our beliefs.
Precisely. They want you to be aware of these tactics so you can critically evaluate the information you're being bombarded with.
Right. It's about being an active consumer of information, not just passively absorbing whatever they throw at you.
Exactly. It's about developing that critical thinking muscle, that discerning eye to see through the manipulation.
So it's not about rejecting all media. It's about being discerning, questioning, and forming your own conclusion.
Exactly. And this ties into the red pill philosophy, right? It's about waking up to reality, even if it's uncomfortable.
Totally. It's about seeing the world for what it is, not just what they want you to see.
Right. Now, speaking of uncomfortable realities, the book also tackles a topic that's often avoided: the historical context of our institution.
Oh, interesting. Like going back in time. Why is that important?
Well, they argue that a lot of our institutions were shaped in eras with very different gender roles and expectations. And as those roles have shifted, the institutions haven't always adapted effectively.
That makes sense. It's like we're playing by old rules that don't really fit the game anymore.
Exactly. They specifically highlight the legal system and how it can be biased against men, especially in areas like divorce and child custody.
Oh, right. Like those stereotypes about fathers just being the wallet
Yeah.
and not the involved parent.
Right. They argue that these systems, which were designed when men were primarily seen as breadwinners, they don't always reflect the shared parenting and financial contributions that are common today.
Yeah, I could see how that would create a sense of unfairness, especially for guys who are trying to be active, involved fathers.
Yeah. Exactly. And they're not saying that women shouldn't have equal rights or opportunities, but they're questioning whether the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction.
Right. It's about finding that balance, that equity, where both genders are treated fairly and have equal opportunity.
Exactly. And understanding this historical context can help men advocate for themselves more effectively. It's about knowing where these challenges come from and then working towards solutions.
That's a powerful message. It's not just about complaining, it's about understanding the bigger picture and working towards positive change.
Right. And this whole discussion about institutions and gender roles ties back to those covert contracts we were talking about earlier.
Oh, right, those unspoken expectations that can create so much tension in relationships.
Exactly. And the book suggests that becoming aware of these covert contracts is the first step towards addressing them.
So it's about shining a light on those hidden agreements, those things we often accept without even realizing it.
Exactly. And once those expectations are out in the open, you can start to negotiate them, renegotiate them, or even walk away if they're not serving you.
It's about taking back control, about being conscious of the dynamics of play, and making choices that align with your own values and needs.
Exactly. And this awareness ties back to self-reliance. It's about being responsible for your own happiness, not relying on others to fulfill your needs or expectations.
Right. It's like empowering yourself to create the relationships you want, rather than just falling into those default patterns.
Exactly. Now, speaking of taking control, I'm curious about what the book has to say about self-improvement. What specific areas do they focus on? So, we've talked about a lot of practical stuff, but the book actually delves into something a bit unexpected, something you might not expect in a, red pill kind of book. Spirituality.
Spirituality. Now that's interesting. It's not usually the first thing that comes to mind when you think of like self-improvement or red pill philosophy.
Right. It seems a bit out of place, but they make a strong case for it. They argue that true masculinity isn't just about, external achievements or fitting into those societal expectations.
So it's more about like inner growth.
Exactly. It's about connecting with a deeper sense of purpose, a source of strength that goes beyond the material world. And that's where spirituality comes in.
Okay, so it's not about like joining a religion or anything like that.
Not necessarily. They emphasize that spirituality is a personal journey, unique to each individual.
So it's more about like finding what resonates with you, what connects you to that deeper meaning.
Exactly. They talk about things like meditation, mindfulness, spending time in nature, even creative pursuits.
Oh, I see. It's about carving out that space for introspection, for connecting with something larger than yourself.
Right. And they even point to the science behind it, Studies show that meditation and mindfulness can reduce stress, improve mental clarity, even boost your physical health.
So it's not just about feeling good. There are actual tangible benefits to it.
Exactly. It's about tapping into a deeper level of awareness and using that to become a stronger, more resilient version of yourself.
You can see how that ties into the whole red pill idea of taking control of your own narrative.
Absolutely. It's about looking inward, defining your own values, and finding that sense of purpose that's independent of external validation.
It's like finding that unshakable core, that inner strength that allows you to navigate the world with confidence and purpose.
Exactly. And they argue that cultivating a spiritual practice can help you become more grounded, more compassionate, more connected to your purpose.
It's like finding that inner compass that guides you through life's challenges.
Right. And it's not just about you either. They talk about how cultivating that inner strength can actually make you a better partner, a better father, a better man in all aspects of your life.
Wow. So it's like this ripple effect,
Yeah.
You start with yourself and it radiates outward into all your relationships.
Exactly. And it's something that anyone can benefit from, not just guys who identify with the red pill.
Absolutely. It's a universal truth. Taking care of your inner world can have a profound impact on your outer world.
Well said. So yeah, this book, it really is packed with insights and practical advice for men who are, looking to level up to create a life that's truly fulfilling.
It's been a fascinating deep dive for sure. We've covered so much ground. self-reliance, emotional resilience, media literacy, the historical context of our institutions, even spiritual.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, but hopefully it's given our listeners some food for thought, some tools to start building that stronger, more resilient version of themselves.
Absolutely. And if you're ready to take that next step to really dive deep into this stuff, we highly recommend checking out the full book. You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
It's a worthwhile investment for sure. And who knows, it might just change your life.
That's it for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving to become the best version of yourself.